Please remain standing for the invocation. My God, where can I find you? Behold, I find you where the plower breaks the hard soil, where the miner digs metals from the reluctant earth, where people earn their bread by the sweat of their brow, among the lonely and the poor, the lowly and the lost. In blazing heat and shattering storm, you are with them. Behold, I find you in the midst, in the mind free to sail by its own stars, in words that spring from the depth of truth, where the scientist and the theologian toil to unravel the secrets of your world, where the poet makes beauty out of truth, where people look at life from the vantage point of faith, and even where we read texts and listen to lectures. Behold, we find you wherever people struggle for freedom, where noble and loving deeds are done. Your glory fills the world, our bodies, praise and lament. Hear our voices again and again. Amen.
Please remain standing for our congregational song, O God of Every Nation. We'll sing verses 1 and 2.
O God of every nation, of every race and land, redeem your whole creation with your almighty hand. Where hate and fear divide us, and bitter threats are hurled, in love and mercy guide us, and heal our strife-torn world. From search for wealth and power, and scorn of truth and right, from trust in bombs that shower destruction through the night, from pride of race and station, and blindness to your way, deliver every nation, eternal God, we pray.
Greetings. It is my pleasure to introduce to particularly the entering class our provost, Susan Wente. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from the University of Iowa and her PhD in Biochemistry at the University of California, Berkeley. She was recruited to Vanderbilt in 2002 as professor and chair of the Department of Cell and Developmental Biology. Since then, she has served in a number of roles, including that of Associate Vice Chancellor for Research and Senior Associate Dean for Biomedical Sciences. In July 2014, she was named Provost and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. Provost Wente runs an internationally respected research program that has made fundamental, groundbreaking discoveries in the mechanisms that control the selective biodirectional exchange of proteins and RNA between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. And I even know what that means. She is also an esteemed educator, having mentored over 20 predoctoral and postdoctoral trainees. Provost Wente has also received a number of awards and honors, including a coveted NIH Merit Award in 2010, and she was named a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. In 2014, she was named one of 10 women to watch by Nashville Medical News. Now, don't let all this science talk fool you. Provost Wente is a provost for all of the university, as she is known for listening closely, examining the challenges judiciously, and helping each school and department to be better at what we do. She is a true friend and colleague of the Divinity School, and it is my honor to introduce her this afternoon and to wish her a happy 27th anniversary.
Good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to be with you here again at Convocation, and I want to thank Dean Towns for her very generous introduction and her leadership and partnership. And indeed, it was 27 years ago I was also in a house of worship, but at that time to tie a knot with my very dear husband. But I find this to be an equally exciting and really gratifying day and event. And I want to thank all the faculty and staff and current students in Divinity for their leadership in research, teaching, and in service. Convocation at the Divinity School has really become for me, I'd say, a cherished tradition. So I thank you all for welcoming me back again. It's such a great privilege, and I have to be sure that I keep my remarks fresh. So for those of you with long-term memory, you realize that I'm adding new contributions each year to this wonderful ceremony. Last year, I indeed shared at Convocation how my work as a faculty member and as a cell biologist seeks to answer questions. Questions that you're going to seek to answer might be different from those that I am seeking to answer, but still, we're all questioning and trying to find solutions. My particular questions focus on, for example, in a general way, environmental factors that might influence how a cell divides, or how a cell develops, or how a cell lives, or how a cell turns out to be a heart cell, or a neuron cell, or an intestinal cell. What are those environmental factors that really influence those decisions and those outcomes? Now, interestingly, I asked similar questions as provost, and I asked them also in another way in terms of trying to understand what cultivates and impedes decisions that people make, what cultivates and impedes success, and what cultivates and impedes what you might say are the life cycles and life across a university. More specifically, what cultivates and impedes our discovery and learning processes, and how do certain environmental factors have an impact on the success of our students, on our staff, and on our faculty. From my perspective, we really need to look at everything, from our physical environment to our cultural and our institutional variables, values, and visions. Now, thinking about the Vanderbilt environment, some of you have arrived incredibly recently. You may have just barely unpacked, you may not have unpacked at all, but we need to take into account the here and now. What is our environment here and now, and where are we moving forward from there? And we also need to learn from others' experiences. Now, this year, you might realize, if you were trying to move in this weekend yourself, that we moved in 1,600 new freshmen, first-year students. And their assignment this summer was to read a book called Strong Inside by Andrew Moranis. And if you have any time, I would encourage all of you to also read this book. It tells the story of Perry Wallace's experience here as a student 50 years ago. So 50 years ago this fall, he arrived as a first-year student. Mr. Wallace was the first African American to play varsity basketball in the SEC. When I first read the book, when it came out about 2 years ago, I had many different, just starting as provost, many different reflections on it. Rereading it again this summer, it made me concentrate and focus more on our environment and how can our environment advance or impede inclusivity and community. We've certainly made changes to our environment over the last 50 years since Mr. Wallace was on campus, yet we have more work to do. And we must continue to ask questions about how a myriad of different environmental factors affect people and their ability to thrive here. Equity, inclusivity, and diversity are among the core guiding principles in our strategic visions. This spans from our people and our culture, but also to our places. Now, we're celebrating a victory on campus right now in terms of our places. This past week, we finally announced the official renaming of Memorial Hall to be Memorial Hall. You may not know this story, but you will come to learn the story, and it's an important story. Peabody College was not part of Vanderbilt during Perry Wallace's time here, and he did not have to think potentially about walking past what was called Confederate Memorial Hall or living in Confederate Memorial Hall. But our current students did, since we merged with Peabody in 1979. That is until last week. I'm thankful to the Chancellor, I'm thankful to the Board of Trust, I'm thankful to the many faculty, students, and staff who worked together to make this change in this aspect of our environment. Now, in addition to places, we also will continue to assess, in addition to this particular place, we also must continue to assess other places and the cultural and institutional variables along a student's academic journey or a faculty or staff member's professional journey. Do you feel supported? Do you have resources at your disposal when challenges arise? I'm excited to work with the Chancellor this year on a mental health campaign that we are branding called Valued at VU. Through the campaign, we will continue to assess our resources in light of today's demands on students, faculty, and staff, and the hard work that we all need to do to ensure that we're promoting mental health awareness and self-care. My most important message is that you are valued at Vanderbilt. Now, I truly believe that asking these types of questions, taking these types of actions, finding solutions together is how we'll make Vanderbilt even stronger than it is today. And in this work, I look to the Divinity School, I look to all the faculty, I look to all the students, I look to all the staff, I look to all the friends of the Divinity School to play a part in providing this strong fundamental foundation to our goals. And from your own goals, I hear that. Your goals to engage in theological inquiry. Your goals to help persons prepare for the practice of Christian ministry and public leadership. Your goals to encourage personal and spiritual foundation. Your goals to prepare agents of social justice. And your goals to educate scholars and teachers locally and globally. These purposes and commitments may be relatively new, historically speaking, from looking back all the way hundreds and hundreds of years. But all of these goals seek to lift society up by enabling individuals to lift themselves and others. Now, I'm not a Bible scholar. You heard I was a scientist, although I really love that the first reading put the scientist and theologian, or the first that we heard put the scientist and the theologian working together to advance us. But I know, guided by these goals, visions, and purposes, the Divinity School has and will continue to achieve greatness. I encourage all of you to continue to reflect on your purpose and to ask the same research question that I keep asking. What environmental factors cultivate or impede your goals? Continue to reflect on your commitments and articulate afresh how you're achieving them. Continue to analyze, refine, continue to grow, continue to develop. Along the way, continue to reach out to other schools, other departments, other students in other programs. Truly one of our trans-institutional hallmarks. through teaching and research collaborations, through lecture series and student clubs. Be a part of the entire community. Your mission, in terms of the Divinity School's mission, is older than the university itself. And in that way, and in many more ways, Divinity is truly the spiritual center of the campus and a compass for our social justice work. By reaching out, you infuse your goals to others, and you infuse your sense of purpose and connections to our shared mission of improving the human condition. So please accept my warmest welcome, and please accept my offer to partner with you as we move forward in these really important missions and goals. This may be our very best year ever. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and welcome. Some who are sitting here today have been coming back to Vanderbilt Divinity School for over 20 years. I first want to say to you all, I hope that when your return here this day is with the mindset that I am here again for the first time. Let me be open again. For those of you just starting out on your journey at VDS, I imagine you might be in that stage of first week on adrenaline. Excited, anxious, determined, standing ready at the gate, already wondering how to study, pray, think, reflect, and contribute here in this place. You might be wondering how on earth you said yes to the call, rising up in you like incense from the depth of your longings to make a difference in the world. I want to suggest to you today that you said yes because you could not say no. You are not alone in your yes or the desires strumming across your heart. Can you hear your heart making itself known in this place? Have you heard the music-making, mind-boggling drumming of being invited to come here? Maya Angelou, in her poem, On the Pulse of the Morning, speaks about, at least in my interpretation, invitation, welcome, and being in a place. I'll read just a section. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the wise rock. So say those who are Asian, Hispanic, the Jew, the African, Native American, the Sioux, the Catholic, Muslim, the French, the Greek, the Irish, the rabbi, the priest, the sheik, the gay, the straight, the preacher, the privileged, those without homes, the teacher. They all hear the speaking of the tree. They hear the first and last of every tree. Speak to humankind today. Come to me, here beside the river. Plant yourself beside the river. Yes, plant yourself here. You are welcome. Maybe you have read or heard in your heart the message, be not conformed to this world, because our vision has to be more expansive, more loving, more beautiful, true, and just, and that you hope that Vanderbilt Divinity School, this community of students, scholars, and staff, researchers, artists, and the artistic, this place where diversity flourishes and diversity is also the not quite, but still hoped for, believed in, possible future. This place where your heart can be softened, convicted, and invited, yes, this happens here, and your intellect ignited, stretched, challenged, and engaged in this place called the School of the Prophets. Now in your first full week of discovery, you may wonder where and if you have a place here. Let me say yes, you do. You are welcome here, all of you. When you think that you have to leave a part of yourself at home, remind yourself you are welcome with your whole self. Welcome to this place in its own VDS way, calls forth prayers, litanies, liturgies, and all kinds of rituals celebrating the goodness that you are. Welcome to this community of formation, because you will not only learn new ideas and practices and ways of being as a student, and teach some too, you will be formed by the relationships you seek and the relationships that find you. You will be formed by professors' lectures, the texts you read, the community dialogues and disagreements that you can count on to surface in the most unexpected places and times. Welcome. When or whenever you open yourselves to deeply engage, whenever you allow yourself to be surprised by the obvious to you and the sublime, whenever you recall that you first welcomed Vanderbilt Divinity School by finding your way here, look around you. Yeah, look around you. You are welcomed here, and you have the opportunity to be welcoming. I close with this brief meditation. Holy Spirit and righteous love, we are justice-seeking pilgrims, and yet sometimes unsure. Guide our steps, gather our thoughts, and form our words in all times and all ways. Reform us so that our lives may become a liturgy of love, walking in the path of justice, a thoughtful, patient, and steadfast engagement with the familiar, the new, the not yet formed, and the formerly rejected, of welcome, making this pilgrimage in community and communion. Welcome and welcome back.
Our first reading comes from Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far off. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you.
A reading from the Gospel of Luke. He said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life? If then you are not able to do so small a thing as that, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying, for it is the nations of the world that strive after all these things, and your God knows that you need them. Instead, strive for God's kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well.
Here's a reading from the book Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Bryan Stevenson. We are all implicated when we allow other people to be mistreated. An absence of compassion can corrupt the decency of a community, a state, a nation. Fear and anger can make us vindictive and abusive, unjust and unfair, until we all suffer from the absence of mercy and we condemn ourselves as much as we victimize others. The closer we get to mass incarceration and extreme levels of punishment, the more I believe it's necessary to recognize that we all need mercy, we all need justice, and perhaps we all need some measure of unmerited grace.
my, choir, what happened? I believe, as we say, you sang that song. You weren't singing. You sang that song. Thank you so much. And you can't know that that's one of my favorites. So thank you. Thank you so, so much. Total praise. Whew. I'm glad I have a robe on. I'd been running around the chapel. And you all would be looking at me going, what happened to the dean? Just a moment, just a moment. I begin with a moment of silence. Something I think we will begin doing each convocation, as we remember those who have gone before us and have passed on over this summer, and those who just entered the world. Life and death is something so much a part of all of us. For those who have died since we last gathered as a community in May, Peggy Way, first woman to be appointed to the faculty full-time at this divinity school. Kathy Griswold, who ran the GDR for a number of years. Daniel Wood, the father-in-law of Chris Boshers, who helps us keep our technology together. And Jane Barr, a scholar in her own right, and the widow of James Barr, who was on this faculty. For the births, Emerson Hayes Madaris, Sylvan Sauerbry Brown, and Marin Lavo Snar. Let us pause, giving thanks. Blessed be. We have been made for times like these. Yes, I know that we've had another difficult to wretched summer. ISIS, Somalia, Syria, Istanbul, floods in Europe, Texas, Ghana, China, Java, West Virginia, Pakistan, Nepal, India, Louisiana, and more. California wildfires, earthquakes in Italy and Myanmar, the murder of 6 transgender women, Zika, Kalamazoo, Orlando, Dallas, Brexit, and far too many countries and peoples more. We also begin this academic year with national unease and dis-ease as we look to local, state, and national elections of all types and wonder if we will elect wisely for our futures and that of others. The hard events of these last several weeks almost drive out those moments of joy and celebration and compassion that have been with us and forming us as well this summer. The magic of a strawberry moon on the summer solstice, reestablishing relations with Cuba, interfaith solidarity in France and Italy in the face of terrorist attacks aimed to drive us apart and make us afraid of each other, the outpouring of support for the victims' families and friends of Orlando and Dallas, The applause for the refugee Olympic team that was composed of men and women from Syria, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Congo when they entered the stadium for the opening of the Olympic Games. Memorial Hall, ending private federal prisons, the countless acts of helping each other, reaching out to one another, sharing with each other, being humane with each other, caring about the rest of creation, and refusing to slip into a nettling nihilism that makes us slip into defense postures of self-centeredness. Oh yes, we have been made for times like these because deep within us and sometimes right on the surface, we recognize and live into a faith, a belief, a set of values that sustains, maintains, and transforms. A belief that does not resort to easy answers to questions that rattle us to our core. Values that move in and out of salvation and justice, carrying us and so many more with them as we face into the challenges of our times, rather than just simply wishing they'd go away, or lapse into a shake dance of apathy, or a whip and nay-nay of watch me now, watch me not do a thing. We are better than this. We are better than this. Our witness, our public declaration should not be easily checked at the door of a politics of fear and an ethos of violence that are part of an evil swill that is made up of settling for mediocre as our best. Contemplations on warehousing people because of their faith or their color or their income or their country of origin. Watching as we lose affordable housing in this city and so many other cities and towns across the land. Not speaking out for a living wage in Tennessee, where we have the highest number of minimum wage workers in the nation. Domestic programs and public policies that look more like bobbing head dolls of carnage rather than constructive responses to the needs we have among us. And refusing to have a meaningful, constructive, strategic, and honest and spiritually deep conversation on race and racism, sex and sexism, class and classism, trans and transsexism, empire and warring and the environment, and so much more. A deep and abiding spirituality means that we must face into the troubles we have in our country, in our cities, in our communities, secular and religious, in this university, and yes, in this divinity school. Let's face it, these are violent times in our country and the world, and we often are not safe. We sometimes settle for a malformed love that is nothing more than an over-churchified, solipsistic Matterhorn of hoarding and arrogance. But I stopped by to tell you this afternoon to remind us all that we can still build refuges of justice. We can look the violence that is racking our communities and making us afraid of one another and do some rim-bone walking with a sense of justice that is wrapped in a love that will not let us go and a peace that is just too ornery to give up on any of us. Our witness, our faith, our proclamation must be strong enough to be wise in the face of daunting tasks and tender in the face of whirlpools of sorrow. whether it be Stevenson's Getting Proximate or Barber's Moral Revolution of Values. So we must stop. We must stop and listen to each other, learn from each other, start seeking information that comes from more than one source, and seek widely from those we might agree with and those we might not agree with. Confront our fears, uncover the stereotypes we harbor about others and ourselves, question our certainty, grow our spirituality and our social witness together, and place ourselves in communal bonds of what philosopher Josiah Royce and minister and social ethicist Martin Luther King Jr. both called the beloved community, that is based on justice, equal opportunity, and love for our fellow human beings, and respect for creation. A place where poverty, hunger, and homelessness are not tolerated because we dare to shape our lives and our communities and our nations around decency and respect. A place where all the isms, that demonic laundry list of our human failings, will be replaced by a mambo step of hope, an electric slide into community, a two-step into justice. That community requires the hard work of redemption, reconciliation, right relationship that begins with confession and conversion. And this is not about building a utopian pipe dream out there. No, this is about crafting a world right here in the midst of us that refuses to believe in the crassness of evil as the primary shaper and mover of our lives. And then we take our lessons, those completed and those still in the making, and live into the worlds around us. The question is, will we accept this assignment? Or will we shy away into platitudes and daydreams of another time and place where we think that difference does not matter and creation is painted in the dreary monochrome of sameness? This time and place of false safety that is neither Torah nor gospel. Not the Spirit, not love, not hope, not salvation, not justice, not spirituality, not new heaven or new earth. My friends, we did not bring you here, and we do not remain here to be theological ostriches. Ostriches, not quite endangered, but definitely in decline. With a head against the soil religion that lives in big flightless bodies using our thin legs to run fast and maneuver around the only big structural issues, but also those that reside in our souls. Doubt, addiction, mental illness, loneliness, pride, fear, and more. We must stand and live into tomorrow like the sequoia and the redwoods of California, the arches of Utah, the walls of Yosemite, the mountain ridges of the Smokies. We must allow ourselves to be shaped by a love that is rich and vital and changes our lives, a love rimmed with compassion and made wise by mercy. We must live into the hope that the world that refuses to descend into despair or settles for homespun yarns of self-righteousness or quotidian tales of fear and anger that make us vindictive, abusive, unjust, unfair. So I invite you to join me in fully engaging in our year to come. I mean, deeply engage in our year within ourselves and within this community. Put down the shields of knowledge you bring with you. They're only going to get in your way. If you are returning or as either student or faculty or staff, let us continue to question and poke at what we were taught and what we have already taught you. Because revelation is ever unfolding, and we just never know when the truth will break out into our lives anew. Let's open ourselves to possibilities, ideas, opinions, and take them in and walk around in them. The Holy walks with all of us and calls each of us to grow in the Spirit and not settle into smug conviction. We must imagine the humanity of other people than ourselves as our assignment, as our responsibility that puts us on the path of the beloved community through what philosopher and statesman Edmund Burke calls the moral imagination that leads us into living our lives in a way that transcends our personal experience as the primary benchmark of creation, and instead leads us to embracing the dignity of all of us and the rest of creation. The moral imagination takes on a fantastic hegemonic imagination that deals death and violence into our lives as a steady diet, such that we think shredding open lives is normal, wrapping our fears and phobias in religion and belief as holy, surrounding our hearts with moats of bile and venom is sane, and tricking ourselves into believing that it's what other people are doing and not us. Oh yes, we have been made for times like these by a holy something that cries from creation's moment, moving upon our waters and setting us free. It calls us. It calls us. Have a good year.
Si la conocen, la cantan. If you know the song, sing it. This prayer. Padre nuestro que estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga tu reino y hágase tu voluntad, así en la tierra como en el cielo. Danos hoy nuestro pan de cada día y perdona nuestras ofensas como nosotros perdonamos a los que nos ofenden, y no nos dejes caer en tentación. Líbranos de todo mal, porque tuyo es el reino, el poder la gloria por los siglos de los siglos.
Throughout my time at Vanderbilt Divinity School, I've had the pleasure of meeting a great many theologians. Our esteemed faculty is so often at the forefront of global theological conversations, as are the authors that you and I encounter in the many classes that we'll take at this school. But I wish to share with you some of the insights my fellow classmates have gifted me over the past 2 years. Among those great many theologians, I rank Marty. Marty embodies dedication and the importance of listening with an open heart. I rank Alan Steele. Alan is the most humble of ministers who recognizes light in all people. I'm forever grateful for my friendships with Robles and Brenda and Molly, who are quick to remind us when unchecked privilege is being overlooked. You know what's up. I'm indebted to Sam, who taught me that sometimes being a prophet means telling a high school football player that they have what it takes to make good grades and be a champion. And I'm indebted to Keller and Dan and the Reverend Evan Bunch, Joe, Krista, Tyler, Judith, Anita, Andy, Ben, and all of those at VDS, fighting injustice with a deep passion for community. For the sake of time, I cannot call you all out, but I could. My involvement at VDS emerged from the friendships that I have with the prophets sitting here today. Each of you brings a valuable perspective. Each of you brings a light to the table from which we may all learn. So if you've chosen Vanderbilt Divinity School because you wish to change the world, you're in the right place. But I believe, like the speakers today, that such change emerges in fellowship. So some of you will serve as officers in the school's many student-led organizations, and others will offer your gifts and talents through art or song or drum lines or protests and testimonies here at Vanderbilt Divinity School and far beyond these walls. But the kind of involvement I hope to invite cannot be listed on a resume. I invite us to always be learning from and about one another. I invite us to navigate our respective callings through dialogue and friendship, forever sowing the seeds of justice. May community always be fostered here, and may the compassion which blooms feed the work that we do, now and always. Thank you.
Would you please rise as you are able? All who love and serve your city, all who bear
Receive the good word. You, of all people, know what is good and what is required of you. To do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. And in so doing, hear the words of Howard Thurman. Follow them with God's speed and unquenchable thirst. Go your own way. Do your own thing. But live in such a way that God nor your people will be ashamed for having made you. Ashe.
Thank you.